so far we've been talking about just React, and you'll never see anyone using just React, right? Like what we've been doing so far, that's just not a very common pattern for writing React. There's always tools involved, right? And then, again, my methodology, and I come from front-end infrastructure as well, so I'm going to subject you to my madness, is that you need to understand your tools in addition to just understanding the framework. So I'm going to keep as light as possible, but I'm going to still help you understand some of the better ways to write React, in my opinion. So here we're going to introduce you to like 3 or 4 tools, and then we'll get back to writing React. So the first one I want to introduce you to, you may already be familiar with, is npm, which does not stand for Node Package Manager, but sort of stands for Node Package Manager. This is going to allow us to, rather than just loading Node off of the CDN, we're going to actually install it off of the registry and build our project so that it's actually included with the package, and we don't have to rely on unpackage to be up, right? Unpackage is really good for just like testing things out, but do not rely on it for production traffic, because then you're at their mercy. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to open your terminal. This is built into VS Code if you are using that. You can open it with control backtick / tilde, the one that's next to the 1 on your keyboard. There's probably a button somewhere for it as well, but that's how I was opening it. So, okay, and then the first thing, you're going to have to make sure that you have Node installed. So I do. I have 10.15. As long as you're over, like, let's say 8, because 6 just got deprecated, or end of life, rather, is the correct term. So as long as you're above 8, you should be fine. I'm on 10.15, which should be pretty close to the LTS right now, which is the one that you want to use. You should use the LTS, which stands for long-term support, I think. Or I'm making that up, and you can believe me. Okay, so with Node comes npm. If you don't have any of these tools installed right now, just go to nodejs.org, and you can just install it right out as well. So notice I'm in desktop/adopt.me, so I'm inside of my project directory, and the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to say npm init, which is going to create a new project for me. Now, I'm super lazy and I don't want to answer any of the questions. So pro tip, if you put -y, it won't ask you any questions and it just generates a file for you. Otherwise you get this interactive prompt like, what's the name of your project, who are you, blah, 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 and I just can't be bothered. So now if you look at my project, you can see here that I have a package.json. Now this is common with JavaScript projects. Again, this may not be the first time you've been exposed to this. Inside of here, close this. It's just a JSON file full of what the license is, what the name of the project is, what version it is, so on and so forth. We don't actually really care what's going on here. You can mess with it if you want to. I'm not going to. But there's a couple things that we're going to be concerned with here. First of all, we're going to have dependencies, and those dependencies are going to be tracked in here, right? So then whenever I say npm install, it's going to grab the same dependency. Right? So if, me and M start working on a project together, I can share this with her, and work together on that project, right? Something like that. We're going to go through some other tools right now. The first one that we're going to install here is going to help us keep high code quality. One of them is going to be prettier. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to say down here is I'm going to say npm install -D, which is going to use the developer dependencies, right? So when I'm deploying my code to production, I don't need to have prettier go with it. This is just for me on my local environment. And I'm going to put prettier like that. Now you can say npm install like this. Again, I'm a lazy person, so I like to type less, so I'm going to put npm I-D. Like that. Okay, so now if you look back at my package.json, you'll see here that I have dev dependencies, and it has now prettier 1.17. Yours might be different if you're doing this in the future, but it's a relatively stable project, so you can go ahead and do that. So now I have prettier installed, and prettier is going to do things where like I can format my project consistently, right? I'm sure many of you have worked on projects where some files have tabs, some of them have spaces, some of them have trailing commas, some of them don't, so on and so forth. So prettier is a project that kind of just takes all the conversation out of that and just standardizes on a format. Now I recognize for some people, like, they don't want to let go of their format because it's the best one and they thought of it first, and we should all use their format because they're much smarter than us, right? We all know that person, and none of us like them. So what prettier does is it just takes away the whole conversation. It's like, no, everyone's going to use the exact same formatting, and we're all stuck with it, and it's all slightly different than we would have chosen it, but we're all on the same format. It's actually one of my favorite tools because I actually really don't care what my code looks like as long as it's well formatted, right? As long as it has a format that's consistent, I don't care. And the great thing about prettier is it just does it for you. So you probably noticed that, like, I've just like been messing around with all this code and doing stuff like this where it's like super gross and everything's on the wrong line and stuff like that, right? Like reading this kind of code makes you a little sick, doesn't it? But with prettier, if I just do this, it just fixes everything for me, and I never have to think about this.
maximum of characters that encode Unicode. Given invalid tag name. Okay.
Right? I've now introduced it at every company that I've worked at, and I will continue doing it to every company that I will work at. First thing here that we want to do is we're going to install Prettier, and I'm going to show you how to run it from the command line. So inside of your package.json, there's a thing called scripts. Here we have one called test, which we don't have any tests for this project yet, so we don't have anything like that. But you can see here that it'll run echo no test specified. So if I say npm run test, right, it's going to run whatever's in here, and it's going to echo error no test specified. Right? So you can see right there, error no test specified. So that's what this scripts is for. Is it allows you to put script like some sort of like bash or zsh or PowerShell command in here, and then it'll run that whenever you say npm run test or format or whatever you put inside of here. So we can put anything in here. I'm going to put one called format. And what format is going to do is it's going to say prettier. So it's going to run this prettier. And we're going to run it on everything inside of our source directory. So source, and then we'll say asterisk dot, what do I have in here? Yeah. Asterisk dot slash asterisk dot, and then we'll put here curly braces JS or CSS, or actually not CSS, but do JS and HTML like that. Then you actually might have to put backslash like this. Okay. So what this is going to do is this is going to run prettier on any file in any directory. That's what this asterisk slash asterisk means. Inside of the source directory that has either a JS or an HTML extension. You need the backslashes here because this will pass it into prettier and allows prettier to resolve this rather than having bash resolve it for you. And then you need a comma here at the end. Okay, so if I run this, it's actually not going to write to it, so I should be able to say npm run format. And you see that it's actually printing it out, which is not what I want. I want it to actually write. So what you're going to do here is you're going to say dash dash write. And you can see there now, I have source app.js and source index.html. So this is helpful because there's going to be someone on your team that doesn't want to like integrate with your workflow. So this allows them to just run this command right before they commit and then push it up, right? Because you want everyone running this command on your team. Now, as you can see here, I haven't been using that. I actually have it runs prettier every time I run save. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So inside of VS Code, go to the extensions, which is this one here, and I have one called prettier, which I'm pretty sure is this top one here. Yep, this one. It's the one that has a lot of downloads, so over 8 million. And just say install. Okay. Once you have that installed, then I want you to go to your settings. So you can either do that through code, preferences, settings, or command comma. And then you need to turn on two things for me. One of them you want to turn on is format on save. So the editor format on save, check that one. That's probably off for you. The second one that I want you to check is require config. So prettier down here, you can see mine's not checked. So prettier, require a config. Check that one. So you want prettier to run, but you only want it to run on projects that prettier is actually installed on, right? You don't want to go into some other project and have prettier run on it, because then you're going to modify literally every line of code, and then the Git blame is going to be on you for every line of code, which is unfun, I will say. Okay. So now that I've done that, this project doesn't have a config yet. We haven't made one. So if I go and do this, I'm saving it, and notice that it's not fixing it. That's what we want right now, right? We only want to run on projects where it has prettier. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a config file. So create a new file, save it to the root directory here, adopt me. And you have to call it this, call it dot prettier rc. I don't even know what RC stands for, but that's what all the bash config files are called. We're going to create one called eslint rc, prettier rc, mvm rc, npm rc. Does anyone know what that stands for? Me neither. Okay, prettier rc. Make that file. Yes, I know it's a reserve file. That's on purpose. Okay, and then I need you to put two magical characters in here. Empty object.
Oh, why is not that working?
Now, there are a few things that you can configure up prettier. You know, if you want it to be tabs or spaces, no quotes, right? It'll, like typically when you paste something in, it's either this or nothing. So down here, we're going to say npm install -D ESLint and ESLint config -prettier, like that. This is going to install two different things for us. It's going to install obviously ESLint, which is a code linter, which let's talk about what the difference between prettier and ESLint is now, because people kind of confuse the two, and understandably so, there's overlap. Prettier is purely concerned with, is there a space here? Is there a return here? You know, how does this file start? How does it? It's very mechanical, right? It's very much, how is this formatted? But it doesn't care about what the code actually does, right? So it doesn't look at like, does this variable exist? Does this, you know, are we using the wrong method here? Are we using old JavaScript here? As long as it parses, like, prettier doesn't care. ESLint is much more concerned with style, right? It's concerned with what methods are you using. Are you being, accessibility friendly, right? You can check kind of those things. Does that make sense? So you can have ESLint check some of the mechanical stuff, but it doesn't have the power that Prettier does for that kind of stuff. So that's why we're going to install the Prettier config and basically say, hey, ESLint, that stuff that you sometimes worry about, like spacing, don't worry about it because Prettier has it, right? So install both of those. Okay, and now we have both of these. ESLint config Prettier, ESLint. And now we're going to go create a ESLint RC as well. So make a new file, save it, and call this .eslint rc.json. They require that you give it the extension, whereas like Pretty RC does not, because you can also configure this in YAML as well as in JavaScript as well. But we're going to do the JSON way of doing it right now. And yes, I'm using period. Did you have a question?
When I ran the command in the terminal, it created a new file called package.lock.json.
Yep, it should do that. Okay. So let's just address that briefly. If I go back over here, it created a new file here called package.lock. So package.lock is it's a lock file. So what it actually does is when you deploy your code to production, it's actually locked down the versions. If you look at this, you can see that it has like integrity checks and like where to download it from and what version it's on and stuff like that. And you want it to have this because now I can install exactly the correct versions in production. So what I'm running on my computer is exactly what's running out in production. So the way that you do that when you're running in production, don't do this on your local computer, but if I do npm ci, it'll actually use the package lock instead of package.json to install exactly the correct versions, right? Whereas if you do npm install, let's see if I go to package.json here. Let's say, next week they release 1.17.1, right? If my file looks like this, it'll actually install 1.17.1. So back to our eslint.json. So the first thing I want to say about Parcel is that I have taught, historically in this class, I have taught Webpack. And Webpack is a phenomenal tool. It's part of the OpenJS Foundation as well. There's a great course on Front-End Masters about it. If you want to learn Webpack and React together, I teach it with React v3, Doc. You just point it at a file and it just kind of figures everything out by itself. There's no configuration to it. Webpack is phenomenal. It's super powerful. If you have like crazy things you need to do with it, Webpack is like your friend doing crazy stuff like that. But it's kind of difficult to set up. Like that's inevitable that with power comes complexity, right? So suffice to say, I love both tools. I'm just choosing Parcel today so that we can focus on React and not necessarily focus on the bundler. What we're going to do now is we're going to say npm install capital D parcel-bundler, like that. That one takes a second because there's a lot of stuff that comes with it. Neatly packages everything for you. It's a pretty impressive tool. Thanks, Front-End Masters. Okay, so now that we've done that, I want you to go into your package.json, and we're going to add another script in here that's going to be dev. And this is going to say parcel source/index.html. So again, all you have to do with parcel is you just point it at the index.html file, and it just figures everything else for you. So now I can go into my adopt me. Well, so first thing I want to mention here, this was confusing to me for a long time until someone pointed it out to me. I was like, how does it know what parcel is, right? I don't think I have parcel available here, right? It says parcel command not found. So like, how does it know that? Well, if you go inside of your node modules here, which is where all of your node, like when I say npm install parcel bundler, that's where it goes into node modules. And there is a secret .bin directory here of all the various different binary tools I can use, right? And one of them in here is called parcel, which is connected to parcel bundler. So that's how it finds it. So so that's how it finds it. So I can, echo's not in here, right? For example, echo's just part of like Mac, but it is able to find parcel and prettier in here. So just so you know, that's how that gets connected together. Now, so if I command click this, it'll open in my browser. You can see, magically, I'm running on localhost 1234, but now this is being packaged by parsing. Now there's some pretty cool stuff about this. If I go into app.js, and I change this to be, I don't know, maybe add another adopt me in here, and and I save this, it automatically refreshes my page for you. So it does that hot module